All right. Today we are continuing our series in the marriage and family topics. And I have a guest on for you today. I haven't had a guest in a couple of weeks because I've been kind of taking over the marriage and divorce aspect of this whole series, which was really interesting and needed. But today we're going to talk about the importance of motherhood. I know that there's a lot of people that tackle that topic and they maybe do it from different perspectives, but I have Angela Mitchell from Raising Apologists on because this is what she talks about and this is what she's on social media she has a great following for people who are just who need to hear the importance of parenting itself. And so let me tell you about her before I bring her on. Angela is happily married. She has 3 children and is a stay-at-home homeschool mom. She has a heart for training her children in truth, equipping them to spot cultural lies, and teaching them to have a biblical worldview. You can find her online ministry to women on Facebook and Instagram at Raising Apologists, where she speaks or she seeks to encourage moms by deep diving into apologetic topics and to help equip their children to think biblically, which is really important. Angela, thanks for coming back on. I've had you on like it's been 2 years or maybe three, man. I can't
I
remember.
know. I know. It's been a while, but
Yeah.
thank you for
Yeah.
having me on. I'm excited to talk about this topic with you.
Yeah, well, what's funny about it is when I was getting ready to, I think I messaged you a few months ago because I was thinking about having this series, in the spring. So you were one of the first people that came to mind because I just know that you speak into this topic and you've been doing it for years. This has been a
Yeah,
while,
it's year
right?
year four.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been
And
going
here's
good.
what I love about you too, though, is that you don't have the website, you don't have a podcast, you don't have all these extra things going. This is just something that it must be just on your heart and I'm going to post about it and you invest in it in that way. And I think that that's unique to people that are online.
It's true. And partly because I am a busy mom and I'm homeschooling, and it has to come from a place of if I have time to get to this, then I will, and an overflow. So I like to keep it um, not too much content, but when I do content, I hope it's encouraging and impactful.
Yeah. I've actually been thinking about that myself. The algorithm loves when you post all the
Yes.
time. And
Yes,
that's a pressure for people to just
it's
throw things
true.
out there. And I
It's
told,
true.
yeah. And I've been telling the Lord because it's like I have people who help me with the clips and the reels and all that, but I haven't posted myself on my feed probably in over a month because I told myself, if you're doing the podcast, they're mining from that. But if you're going to post a thought or something that you're learning, make it count, make your words count. Because that's what Proverbs always talks about, wise words being spoken at the right time
Mhm.
and in the right setting. And I think social media can just be this place for everybody to vomit out what they think. And
Yeah.
so I told myself, you know what? You need to make sure that you use wisdom when to post. Like you might think this is a great thought and I'm going to share it. But, or what can I say today to keep that algorithm happy? And it's like, well, you have to be careful because I think even in that, when God holds us accountable for our words, it's going to
Mhm.
be what our words that are posted on social media.
It's so true. Yeah, and we are definitely aware of that, aren't we? Being
Yeah.
content creators. So
Yes, for sure. So I love that you do that. I just think that that's it's to be admired because it's not an easy thing when you have the pressure of, like I said, the algorithm, which seems like a whole other person and it's not. It's just technology. It's
it's
just social
true.
media. All
Yes.
right. So we're going to talk about motherhood today from a biblical perspective.
Mhm.
And um I think again, you can come at motherhood from different angles and people have their own opinions about what it looks like. And there's a lot of talk on social media from the people that I follow about parenting and motherhood. We're going to get into some of those topics, but for the most part, I want to start from like the foundation. Let's talk about what motherhood is from a biblical perspective. If you're going to answer that question, like what do Christian moms need to think about or maybe look like in comparison to the culture. And you had mentioned before that motherhood sanctifies us. And so I thought that that was an interesting topic or interesting thought because I had said that about marriage too, that marriage also is a way of sanctifying us because there's another person involved that we have to consider over ourselves. So would you expand on the biblical aspect of motherhood and then that thought as well?
Yes, I think, like you said, there's just many different um, topics that we could go into when we think about motherhood. And this is really just the bird's eye view for moms. But the whole point of being a mother is to raise our children in the admonition of the Lord. That's the entire point. And we bear God's image when we mother. And so it really isn't about us. And so from the moment that we have that newborn baby placed into our arms, we realize the gigantic responsibility that we've been given. So children are a blessing. In Psalm 127, it says they're a heritage from the Lord, they're a gift. And I think about Hannah in First Samuel when she prayed for a child, and the Lord answered that prayer. And she said that she was going to dedicate that child right back to the Lord. That's the whole purpose of being a mother. And this is hard because our flesh is involved. We're not perfect. We need God's grace every single moment. We realize our weakness. Motherhood has a way of exposing areas that we need to grow, and it's really the fast track of sanctification. And that's a big word, but that just means a growth in holiness, a dying to self every single day. And motherhood has a way of doing that. It's putting someone else's needs above our own. That's not natural. It does not come natural. We think it will. And then, as soon as we have that crying baby and there's nothing that we can do to make them stop crying, and that frustration, how can I be frustrated with this cute little baby that I just love so much? And you realize how sinful you are. And yeah, it's just an opportunity to grow in repentance. And it's almost as your kids, as soon as they're put in your arms, like I said, and they start growing, you start growing as well. And learning to rely on the word and to rely on prayer, to repent daily. It's just a fast track of sanctification.
hmm it's as I'm a mother of three that are older.
Mhm.
My oldest just came out of his teens, so he's 20. I have an 18-year-old, a 14-year-old. And one of the things I've realized looking back over the years, those early days are so true about like, oh my gosh, like I'm so frustrated with this cute little bundle of joy. You know what I mean? Because it's like won't stop crying. And then as they get older, I think the Lord sanctifies you, takes that sanctification process and it almost reverses in the sense of now I start trying to hold on and I
Yeah.
have to learn to trust in the Lord. I have to learn to trust in those foundational years and those things that we did when they were babies, when they were toddlers and those elementary school aged little kids, because it's like, Lord, am I going to trust you when I don't have control anymore?
Yes, and that's right. Every year you lose a little bit more control, and you think that young season you're in is the hardest it's going to be. And you start looking at the other seasons and going, when will I get there? When will they sleep through the night? When will they be potty trained? When will they be walking? But with each new season, there comes new challenges, and there comes
Yes.
new having to surrender their lives to the Lord, and that in itself is hard. And they start forming their own opinions, and then you start realizing they have sin struggles as well. And so, yeah, it's just every season is a different level of sanctification.
Yes, absolutely. But it's a really I mean, everybody says it goes by fast. My husband and I were talking the other day. He said, "Man, it seems like when they're little, the days are longer."
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, babe, haven't you heard that saying? It's like the days are long, but the years are short." And he said, "Oh, I haven't heard that, but that's really is a really great way to put it."
Yes.
And when you think about it, like we're going to get into this too, but one of the things I kept telling myself when they were younger is the career can wait. I had just got my teaching credential when my oldest was 1, so I graduated a few weeks before he was born, like huge pregnant
Mhm.
with my bachelor's the year before that. And I was like, man, I don't want to work full time. Like, I want to be there for him and I want to see all the things. I wanted to not miss anything. It wasn't in my mind to like teach everything. Like, I got to teach him this and that. It was like, I don't want to miss it. I don't, because you're only going to have that first step once. You're only going to have that first word once, So I didn't want to miss any of that. But I kept telling myself, it'll all be there once they're older, and that is true, but then sometimes even you can change, and we're going to talk about that. Like, maybe you won't want that when the time does come where it's
Mhm.
like you're more freed with time and stuff. But God changes us through motherhood in such wonderful ways. And one of the things I also think about is when I'm praying and my prayer schedule's off. When my day's off, then my when I pray gets a little bit wonky, and I'm
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh, I can't, go to this time in prayer like I usually do. But I always think of my boys. I need to call out their names in prayer every day. Like, they need that. The Lord, they're older and they need that guidance from the Lord. And I don't want the Lord's hand. I want the Lord to be there. And so I'm like, as a mom, we learn to pray and we learn to pray for our kids. Because if there's anybody I think that we're praying for in life, the heartfelt prayer is going to be over your children. Like,
It's
God,
true.
be with
I
them.
mean, a mother's prayer can carry a child's, and I'm really testimony to that because I wasn't saved until later in life, but my mother prayed for me. And that's one thing that I remember growing up is just her prayer life. Um, and so, yes, if God has put us in just such a great position, we love them, and nobody else loves them like we do, and we know them. And so that should enrich our prayer lives with how to pray for them.
Yes, absolutely. So we're going to switch gears just for a minute to kind of like a role model topic, because Taylor Swift has been in the spotlight. Well, of course, with Super Bowl, because she was dating the NFL star Travis Kelce. And honestly, even during all that, I'm just like, how long is this going to last?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people on social media doing carousels about Taylor Swift, and I have my own opinions about her. I think we all do. But she is like, when I was growing up, I know that Madonna was huge. She seems like either as big or bigger than like the craze of Madonna.
Yes, I would really associate her with like a Gandhi. It's almost like she is this fixture and a movement, and she can do no wrong.
Yeah.
And her words are life giving, and it's really kind of like a religious experience, I would say, for a lot of people. Not everyone. I mean, everyone just likes the way the music sounds. They like a catchy tune. But there is a group, and they call themselves Swifties, they follow her like a religion. So it's just an interesting social experiment.
Yes. Well, when I see some people they're getting dressed up, they're going to her concerts, and it's usually a mother daughter. Like, I've seen a lot of these mother daughter duos going and getting ready, and they're all excited. And so it just has a lot to say to me about role models for girls in the 21st century. And I wanted to kind of talk about that. What does it say about, like, how should we as moms consider that role of role model? I don't know that I ever, like, you know, thought about in the forefront of my mind growing up, like, my mom's my role model. I want to be like her when I grow up. I don't know that anyone actually
No,
says that.
no, not until later in life, I
Yes.
would say.
Yes.
And I think we need to remember that when we're parenting our preteens and teens, that the immature child in front of us, and they do have some maturity and some wisdom. We don't need to discount that. But they're not going to stay 13, 14, 15, even 18. One day they're going to be 35. And there will be some, why did you let me listen to that? Or why did you take me to that? So just keep the long view in mind. Yeah, upsetting them temporarily while they're a preteen or teenager. Keep the long view in mind with that. But yeah, to role models, I feel like social media and the internet and giving our kids cell phones too early has led to this phenomenon almost of parasocial relationships. And that's, in a way, has always existed. Parasocial relationships where we identify with celebrities and we feel like we know them, but they have no idea that we exist. And so it's growing. The affection for one-sided relationships is growing, I feel like, amongst teenagers because they're alone in their rooms on their phone. And they're not really relating to others as well in person. So with Taylor Swift, especially, people are identifying with her, and she knows how to hit us right in our feelings. And yeah, that's kind of hard to compete with. But for parents, I think if we're slow to give our children a cell phone and we are monitoring and being watchmen, because we're called to be watchmen of what they're absorbing and listening to, um, we might not make them see us as their role model, but we can protect them from idolizing, you know, the next pop star because they're not just feeding on that when they go into their rooms.
Mhm.
So yes, you might not be their role model right now in this season, but have the long view in mind. And also the women in your church or the women that you surround yourself with, or the men, if you have boys, point out the good qualities. Find a way to get your kids around other solid believers. You and your husband are the first role models to them. You are an example. You have the greatest influence on them. But surround yourself with other godly influences. And in our home, we really like to study church history. We like to look at the saints that came before us, the martyrs. We like to look at their life stories and the courage that they had. And I have found my oldest, she's going to be a teenager this year. It really has imparted courage to her to look at these women that have died for what they believe. And just that focus of we're Christians, and Christians, we live a different way, we think a different way, and we don't idolize things that do not bring the Lord glory. And having that standard is a good way to put a hedge around your family. So,
Yeah, that is good. And thinking back to, when my parents were raising me, it's not the things that made me feel good that I implement into my parenting as much as it's the things that hurt at the time that I think that was good for me. And I need to do that with my kids. That's those biggest lessons that I learned were the ones that I hated in the moment, but the ones I'm so thankful for now. And I always tell my dad, like, that was the best thing you could have done. He'll sometimes tell me when he's thinking back to, certain disciplines or whatever frictions and frustrations that we had went through. He'll be like, yeah, that was so hard for me. Like I felt so bad for how, I had to handle that with you. And I told him why that was the best thing that you could have done for me. That was the growth. Like my dad pushed me over a threshold of immaturity to maturity in a lot of ways because, and my mom too. But those are the moments that I think about and when I'm parenting and I think this is hard right now to discipline my kids in this way, but they are going to thank me one day.
it's true.
And yeah,
And compromise is just not to compromise truth in order to keep your child's friendship in the moment. And a lot of this is in the moment. They're mad at you for a day, maybe, but they usually come back around.
yeah.
The highest goal of your relationship with your child is not to be their best buddy, and to get along with them. Like I said, that's 24-hour view of parenting instead of the long view.
Mhm.
And if we love them, we will do things and not allow things that they don't like. That is the definition of love, is to, if you have a splinter, it's going to hurt to take it out if our child has a splinter, and they would much prefer us leave it in there and let it fester and grow infection.
Mhm.
But because we love them, we're going to pluck it out, and they're going to feel temporary pain, because we know that that's not worth the infection that comes from that. And so just keeping that in mind, the long view.
Yeah, I love the idea of the long view because nobody
Mhm.
wants to play that long game. Everybody wants the immediate the immediate result, the immediate response, and we've been also conditioned for that in our culture of the microwave dinners and, at my fingertips I can watch anything on my phone, I can find out any information on my phone, but the enemy plays the long game. And I was actually thinking about this the other day because even discipleship itself is it's it's a long game, and you're saying the long view. We do need to keep that in mind because it's not just I taught this Bible story on a Sunday morning and that's all they need. Discipleship is every day knowing that you're forming the worldview of that child in this respect. And so the church doesn't even play the long game in regard to discipleship. And keeping that in mind, I think we need to say one day when they're older, they're not going to thank Taylor Swift for all the songs that she played. They're not even going to say, Mom, thanks when I was 13 or 14 that you took me to that Taylor Swift concert. That was the best highlight of my childhood. They're likely to say, thanks for being tough because of the lessons you taught me. I hated it in the moment, but it made me who I am. And that's what they're going to say because we say it. And
Right.
and like you said, if we're not stepping into that role of parenting and doing the hard things, they're going to ask you why you didn't do it.
Right. That
Yeah.
is so true. And another thing with Taylor is that um, I think that we believe, well, this is just not one of the pushbacks that I got when I wrote about Taylor Swift from moms was this: there's so many worse things that are going on. To say, you know, you're really sheltered to think that Taylor Swift is something that we should be concerned about. You should see what's going on in public schools and things like that. And while I do understand that point, um, I think that if we ignore the fact that something that looks good and sounds good and is wrapped in a cotton candy package is not more dangerous than the obvious grotesque, um,
Mm,
we've lost sight of it. And yeah, just the phenomenon of, you know, Taylor Swift and Christian women. I don't understand that.
yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. That is a great point. Just don't overlook the simple little things just because
Right.
you think that they're not as harmful as the big things that you can recognize. It's like, yeah.
And if you have made prayer and scripture and confession of sin a normal thing in your home, Taylor's music and her lyrics, and really any pop star that's singing things that are corrupting, they're going to sound like sour notes to your children. They're going to
Right.
go, this isn't what we normally talk about or listen to or read or feast on. And so I would say that if it's a normal thing to your children, if they hear Taylor's music and they're like, what is wrong with this? You're not giving them enough scripture. You're not praying with them enough. You need to really adjust your priorities in
Mm-hmm.
that area.
Absolutely. So if you could give a new mom three important things to remember as she steps into this new role, what would they be? And maybe there are moms in the thick of motherhood because we're not all new moms. Some of us are like, maybe we are at the threshold of teenage years, and those middle school years can be tough because that kid's trying to figure out what they are going to do, what they're going to be, who they are. I think that's the biggest struggle with identity in kids is mostly around that 12, 13-year age. So what would be your advice to moms?
Yeah, well, for new moms, I would say pray and read the word. In those early years, you are thirsty, so you need to drink living water, and you are hungry every single day, so you need to feast on the word. But that is going to look different. It might be 5 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
but take the 5 minutes and open up the Bible and read it or listen to it. I have learned, so I've almost memorized books of the Bible just from listening to them because my hands are full.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to them while you're doing the dishes, in the car, memorize scripture in song form. There's all kinds of ways. We have just such rich media now. But yes, that would be first and foremost. I would also say don't compare.
Mm-hmm.
I think that with the internet and with social media, we have just a lot of opportunity to look at other moms and with their weaknesses and with their strengths and say, why am I not like that? But you are you with your own sin struggles, your own strengths, and your own weaknesses. And God made you the mother of your children and not the lady down the street. And so comparison is the thief of joy, yes, but it's also sin. And it's the great relationship destroyer because if you compare yourself to your friends all the time, it's very hard to keep them as friends. So yeah, don't compare. Embrace the season that you're in. So if you have young children, you might not want to sign yourself up for other outside endeavors. And I know we roll our eyes when little old ladies say it goes by too fast, and you're gonna miss this. And we have messy buns with spit up all over our shirt, and we haven't showered in 3 days, and we think I'm gonna miss this. Like, that's not encouraging to me, but it's true. As soon as you're in that season, you're out of it, and
Mhm.
in a blink of an eye, and you just realize how short that is. So it's really okay to say no and to focus on your young children. That is your highest calling in that season. And my last encouragement would be to find godly friends, find godly older women. Just go sit next to them. It's Google is good, and it has some good wisdom, but it isn't great, and it is not a relationship. And all the advice on the internet does not know you. So getting to know other women that have been where you are, they're a little bit further down than you are, that can really help you in keeping what's important, and like the main thing. So
Yeah, that's good. I think that's really good. Yeah, it is true. I saw somebody, like, you're right about the ladies who get like, if I hear this goes by fast one more time, they get irritated. But it's a good reminder too, to just, sometimes I think it pulls us out of that, will this ever end? If
yes.
you have somebody who's been there before to say it will, and it's going to go by fast, and you'll look back and realize, that, wow, that didn't last forever. I think when we are in a season of life, whether it be grief or whether it be some sort of pain, or even when you're sick and you have the flu and you're like, how long am I going to be in this bed for? We're always asking, how long? How long is this going to happen? And then before you know it, you're out of it, and you look back and you think, wow, that didn't last as long as I thought, even though it was hard in the moment.
Right, right. And we often regret the complaining and the wishing it away, and far more than the moments that we just embrace with joy. Now, we're not going to do that perfectly. We obviously are going to have moments where we need
Yeah.
to be honest. But yeah, it goes by so quickly. All of it does. And so taking every season in strides and with joy, and realizing that when it's hard, it's building resilience, and it's building a trust on the Lord,
Yeah.
and it's showing you your weakness, because that's what God says. The only thing that he'll use is your weakness, so he can display his strength. And it takes time, but you can look back and say, man, that was a hard season, but I wouldn't trade that season for anything, because it grew me, and I got to be there with my babies,
Mhm.
seeing all the moments, and that's irreplaceable.
It is. And you'll never regret being there. You'll never
No.
regret, like, I mean, I can attest to this, taking, like, I said this before on my podcast, taking you know, the non-contracted teaching positions and feeling like less than a teacher, because I wasn't there all the time, or I wasn't, on the contracted lists, and even tutoring when they would take naps and stuff. And I look back to that and I think, oh my gosh, like, I'm so glad my husband and I decided to do it that way, because we were able to be there for the boys, and we handled it together. And so I don't regret it for 1 second. I mean, I think what my regret would be if I would have taken a contracted position and not been there for them. And,
Yeah.
teaching is like, you get the summers off. So when they're in school, you follow the same schedule, fine, but they weren't in school at the time. And for those first 5 years, they're at home, and they're learning all the first words and the steps and all that. And so we won't regret doing the harder thing to be there and to rear our own children. We will regret not being there.
Yeah.
Most of the time, if you look at what women regret, or moms, if they're looking back, that will be one of the things, is how much time I spent.
Right. And you're really outsourcing that to somebody else. So somebody is there.
Yes.
Somebody is raising them. Someone's morals, someone's thoughts, someone's way of doing things. And I think, as mothers, we should say, well, you can't replace me. You cannot
Yeah,
replace me in that. So
exactly. And, according to George Barna, a child's worldview is formed by the time they're 13. And you're talking, it starts to be formed, the formation of it begins at 18 months. So that's young. And those understandings or just learning those things blow me away where I'm like, whoa, an 18-month-old's walking around and developing their worldview. But when you think of it that way, if they're going to preschool or, nursery or wherever they go, childcare, and somebody's reading them a book and you don't know what book they're reading, they're already starting to form that worldview. Those are just things to consider, not to make any moms feel guilty. I'm not trying to do that. But just consider those things, because once that worldview is formed at 13, it's a lot more difficult to change,
Mhm.
how they think and believe after
It's
that.
true. Hmm.
So, I did send you a reel on Instagram after we talked about this, and I thought, oh my gosh, Angela, we have to discuss this question. And I don't really know who Lily Allen is. Do you?
No, I'm not really familiar
Yeah,
with
I
it.
was gonna look her up. She has like a British accent, which I always love accents because I'm like, they sound so sophisticated, but she's a celebrity of some sort. And she
Mhm.
was doing this interview with her daughter. And it's funny because you hear moms trying to balance it all or juggle it all with motherhood and career. And she just flat out said, you can't have it all. And because my parents weren't there for me, um, I decided to do it differently with my kids. I wanted to be there with them. So I think maybe her parents, from what I'm gathering, just gleaning from that 60-second reel, may have also been either celebrities or some sort of career driven people to where she didn't get them. They weren't around. And so she's like, I'm not doing this. And so her thing was, you can't have it all. You have to choose in motherhood. And that is going to make some women be like, wait, what? But what do you think about that?
I mean, I agree. We are one person. We are finite. We all have the same hours in the day.
Yeah,
And what you're giving your time and attention to, you can't be giving your time and attention to two things at one time. It just is not a reality. And we hear that message of you can have it all, you can do it all, you can be it all, but that's a lie. No one is. No one's capable of that. Only God is. Only He can be everywhere and do everything all at one time.
that's
And He knows our frame and what we're capable of. And you can have it all. And if by realizing that your role as a mom is the highest that it gets,
yeah.
that's your highest priority. And I always say that I do have it all. But yes, having it's a career mindset. It's not necessarily a working mom mindset.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. And we want to be careful not to speak where scripture doesn't. But this boss babe mindset of this is where I'm finding my significance. I need something outside of this. I need something for me. It's all very me centric. And usually that thought process translates into motherhood where I had these children to fulfill me. It's
Mhm.
about me and my relationship with them. They're like extensions of who I am. So yeah, it's a cultural and worldly view that we do see Christian women adopting because it's enticing. You can have this and this too.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I would say that's a small view of the role of motherhood. To think that serving your family and being at home and doing mundane things. I don't think any of us are excited to change another poopy diaper. Um,
Right.
but this is service and it's pouring your life out and it isn't all about you. And that's what we're called to do as Christians is to pour our life out and to make it all about Christ.
Mhm.
And what better way than to forego your big dreams and your desires and start realizing that you didn't give up anything at all, that
Yeah.
God has given you something better, a better portion.
Mhm.
And it's just selling women short of the glorious role that he's given us as his image bearers.
That is so good. Yes. Yes, that's so good. And when you think about it, you sleep 1/3 of your day.
Right.
Like 1/3 of your day is taken up with sleep. So you don't even have as much time, waking hours to
Mhm.
juggle everything. And like you said, you're not going to give your best to two things at once. You can only give your best to one of those things. And whatever you have left over is what you give to the other thing. And I also like your thought on thinking of motherhood as as the career, like as how, and you grow in that. And, and like you said, no one looks forward to changing another poopy diaper. So for those of you that change poopy diapers, when you're done with that, you're going to be picking up socks. The other day I told my boys, you guys left all your socks in the living room. Like,
Everywhere.
yes. And I said, and when I pick them up, because your feet stink, like my hands smell. And I'm like, that's gross. And go pick them up yourself. Like you need to you're old enough. And so
Right.
you're always having those mom talks.
Yes,
I
it's
mean,
true. It doesn't end.
it
It just
doesn't.
transfers into something else. And it's almost like as they get older, there's more stuff that you're
Yes.
moving around as they're creative and
Yes.
oh
Yes. Books. And we have
yes.
books in the living room that are like packed and stacked. And
Mhm.
I think why put them in another room?
Right.
They're gonna come back out. So let's put them in a stack here. But yeah,
Mhm.
you're always moving on. But it's also funny, when you say, like last night we were talking about the stinky socks again and stuff. But it's funny, and it's at the same time you become with your kids, like you see them growing up, and you see their hearts when they start to follow after God, and it's the best reward. It is like, God, you have blessed me so much with these kids who now are following you. And you see the hand of God in their lives as well. And there is no promotion at work that will last. That feeling of getting promoted might be exciting for a little bit, but it won't be as lasting as seeing your kids making those decisions and choices to follow the Lord and seeing God bless them and lead
And
them.
it won't be as fruitful because you can be replaced at work. I mean,
Mm,
when people
yeah.
die, they have somebody already in that position. But when you're a parent, this is a generational heritage. So not only can what you're pouring into your children produce fruit for the kingdom, what they pour into their children and their children. I mean, this is a generational effect that we have here. That's just so much bigger than a job.
Yeah. Ooh,
You're
that's so
totally
good.
replaceable.
Yeah, you're dropping like the hot bombs here, because that is true. Like you can be replaced at work, but you will never be replaced to your kids as a mother.
Right.
You will
No,
never be replaced.
you
I
won't.
mean, even when they get married, if you have boys, I always think about, gosh, my boys have to leave their mother and father and cleave to their wife. And I have to be, the wives are going to be their number one. And my boys tell me all the time, like, yes, we'll have a different relationship, like but we're always going to love you. You're our mom.
Right.
And,
No, you'll always be their mother. That's the
yeah,
only role that you were in. And parenting
yes.
doesn't stop. Not when they move out and not when they get married. And if you've worked on your relationship with your children, you've pointed them to Christ imperfectly, um, and you've repented often when you've done wrong. Yeah, I just see no reason why that relationship can't continue
Mhm.
even when they're married. That can be such a beautiful thing. And then you have another opportunity to impact your grandchildren, to
Yeah,
come alongside them and to disciple them in your own way. And it's a beautiful heritage and
it
legacy.
is. It
Yeah,
is very much so. And I think too, when you're a mom and you think that, wow, I just need to get out there and do my career and stuff, you're actually looking for fulfillment beyond being fulfilled in that motherhood role. And again, don't get me wrong, you and I both, Angela, have been through three babies, three sets of, endless sleepless nights for a time, but we're out of that now. We can honestly say we've been through it. We know what that's like. It can be challenging and exhausting. And, you're in that. If one more person asks me a question, I'm gonna, go crazy today. I mean, there's all of those seasons, but they call them seasons of life for a reason, because they do end. And but even in those, there's, like you said, the growth that's taking place in a mother at that time, during those hard times. I think that the Lord uses that to just make us who He wants us to be.
right. And there will be encouragement.
Yes.
And I think in that young season, you're like, what is the fruit of this labor? But as soon as that baby smiles at you for the first time, you think
Yes.
there it is. There's a reward. There's an
Yes.
encouragement to keep going. And so just remembering that the Lord is faithful and he'll be
Yes.
faithful to encourage you to keep going when it's hard. And um, yeah, just to stay in his word for that,
Absolutely.
for those hard seasons.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So our culture does not nurture prioritizing family for over success. I wish it did. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing this series on marriage and family is that we need to get back to valuing first marriage and how God instituted it, and the strength of the family is going to help the strength of society. But we're chasing other things like career and things like that. The mother is the primary caregiver in those early years of a child's life. What would you say are the top three priorities a mother should have when it comes to her family, per a biblical perspective? And and then I'm sure this is going to be counterculture to what we see on social media, because social media is always going to tell the mom to, like I said, there were these trends of mommies and wine or wine Wednesday or something. And now
Yeah.
I did hear that some moms are starting to smoke pot. I think I heard that on a
Yeah,
podcast, and I'm
that's a
like,
popular thing. It's self-care. It's
yes,
self to, but all the self-care in the world and vacations and we do need to realize like taking a shower and brushing your teeth and getting yourself ready is not self-care. This is
yeah,
just that is just basic taking care of your needs.
right,
But yeah, to think that a night away with your girlfriends or a vacation, you come back and you keep needing those things. They're never fulfilling. They never scratch that itch of I've cared for myself enough. Now I feel like my tank is full.
right,
It's just never ending. But yeah, that I would say, like you said, that the three priorities are really a right relationship with your husband if you're married. That's just the most important thing in parenting and is your marriage. Focus on your marriage because it's really easy to just become two taking care of children machines where the whole home revolves around your children and it and to neglect your marital union
yeah,
and your growth there. But your kids need that. They need that stability, and they need that picture of Christ and the church because that's what marriage is. It's not just a partnership and parenting and deciding, what to do with your kids next. It's a reflection of Christ and His church, and so just prioritizing that relationship, your relationship with the Lord. Um, because if you don't know the word and if you're not in the word, you cannot teach your children the word. And I feel like a lot of moms feel really ill equipped to disciple their children. And instead of taking on that role, they outsource it. And there's some things that we can't be experts on and we need help with. That's not what I'm saying. But your role is to disciple them. That is your role. And so to do that, you need to know what the word says. You need to be prioritizing your time in that. And then the last thing I would say as a priority is your home. What are you doing in your life that is taking you away from your home?
mhm,
Are there things in your life that you're doing that support your home? That not everything is black and white that way, but yes, having a heart and a focus for your home.
yeah, absolutely. Again, I always, try to stress the fact that if you're going to make any sort of change or influence in life, it's always going to start right where you are. And I, again, we don't often think about being like where we are, our marriage being one of those things to prioritize in the role of motherhood.
Right.
But you're right. When I was younger and my kids were younger, it is easy to get like all about the kids and taking care of them. And then by the time you go to bed, it's like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want you touching me. I don't want any of that
Right.
because I am spent, you
Right.
know.
And a lot of times we think, well, more date nights is what we need. And, we our priorities get all weird, but it doesn't have to be that complicated. It's just making sure that we're praying together, that we're reading the word together, that we're communicating with one another, that we're forgiving each
Yeah.
other. Um, so yeah, and just prioritizing your husband. So
Yes, absolutely. Well, this was a great conversation. You are full of wisdom. Again, I appreciate what you do because you're there you're living this out with your family, and then you're also giving this advice to other moms on social media, and we don't have a real, Titus 2 outlook, even in the church. Like, there's just not a lot of older women discipling the younger, or women who have been there before, encouraging the younger that, it's not going to last forever. And here's what you can do to make it easier.
Mhm.
So sometimes people turn to social media because they're not getting that in real life.
Right. And I understand that.
Yeah.
I really do. And it's hard, especially when you want it and it's not happening. Um, but yeah, stay in prayer for that, that the Lord
Mhm.
would send you someone, or that you could be, we're all a little bit further ahead than someone else,
Yes.
that you could be that for someone else. But yeah, I agree with
Yeah.
you. Titus too is needed. Women need it and want it. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Well, remind us again where we can find you.
yes, I am on Instagram. It's my handle is at Raising Apologist. I'm also on Facebook at Raising Apologist.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you again, Angela. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy mom, and
Thank you, Shanda.
yeah, thanks for being
Appreciate you
here.
coming on. Mhm.
Yes. So if you're listening to this and you want to get in touch with Angela, you can go to Raising Apologists on Instagram and Facebook. You'll find lots and lots of wisdom from Angela when she posts about, just parenting in today's culture and how to do that effectively. I'll be sure to put all of that in the show notes. And if you have any questions for me, you can email me at hello@shandafulbright.com, and I'll catch you on the next one.